Throughout history, man's relationship with the ocean has been filled with tales of terror and loss, wealth and bounty. For a small fishing village, the ocean will provide life as well as take it. And in the thick cloak of morning fog, two ships in the open ocean are strangely drawn together in the blink of an eye. Friday, June 19th, 1959. Another week of school comes to a close in the hamlet of Escuminac on the south shore of New Brunswick's Miramichi Bay.
It's the mouth of the Miramichi River, the New Brunswick coast and Northumberland Strait to the south, and the Gulf of St. Lawrence to the north, and you're looking straight across at Prince Edward Island.
13-year-old Brian Lloyd has two reasons for getting home as quickly as he can.
Mom said if you could get home by 3:45, she'd give me a penny. By the end of the week, I'd have 5 cents if we get an ice cream cone.
But today, Brian isn't thinking about ice cream. He's looking forward to a night of fishing with his father, Roy.
Friday, the boys would run home from school, drop their books, and head straight down to the wharf, and you'd be home crying all weekend if you missed the boat.
I remember driving them out. It was blowing hard and raining.
Mom always said she wanted me to stay that night because he knew the weather wasn't that good.
At the wharf, Brian and Roy stow their gear on board. They are not too worried about safety. Their boat, the Sharonelle, is one of the few equipped with a car radio, so they can keep track of weather reports. And Roy has been a fisherman long enough to know that if it gets too rough, you head to deeper water.
The maximum height that a wave can go is related to the depth of the water. When you get in too close to shore, and the water is no longer deep enough to support that wave, then the wave collapses and it, I guess, fills your boat with water. You stay out to sea.
The 600-meter breakwater is the hub of a local fishing industry struggling to make ends meet.
There wasn't all that many fishermen then fishing at Escuminac, but it was the center of the fishery for drifting for salmon and mackerel and lobsters. It wasn't a real prosperous place then.
In June 1959, fishermen are getting a boost from the best run of salmon in more than a decade. The miserable weather of the past week has a lot to do with it.
Dreary week, drizzle, fog, drizzle and fog. Wind's been east, northeast, east, northeast.
Delilah Lloyd sees off her husband and son at the dock. Even though the weather is choppy, she trusts her husband to take care of their son, Brian. Fisherman Albert Chiasson is looking forward to celebrating Father's Day that Sunday with his family. He has 14 children, the youngest just 6 months old. He takes one of them with him that Friday afternoon, 16-year-old Alphonse.
Well, Alphonse was a little bit older than myself, and he worked hard to help my dad.
Albert hugs his family goodbye before joining his son Alphonse on the boat. The lure of a good catch brings out more fishermen this Friday afternoon than any day that week, despite a forecast for continued bad weather.
The Atlantic coast is really sort of the end of all of the storms that are often born in North America. They all seem to come through Atlantic Canada. And so it's not uncommon to see storminess in that area.
What is uncommon is a high-pressure system over Newfoundland that is preventing storms from moving out into the Atlantic, and a low-pressure system doing the same over the northeastern United States.
This upper low over New England provided day after day a lot of cloud and some drizzle and some fog and some strong winds, a real buffet of weather types. And any systems that were coming off the North American continent would come up to the northeast and would get trapped in this upper low.
Jack Doucette's boat, the Francine D, is one of the largest in the fleet, but the ominous skies still make the decision a difficult one.
We were on the wharf for about maybe an hour or two. Not really want to go out, and not really want to stay home, because the fish were running, and finally we decided to go.
53 other boats joined them that afternoon, leaving the Escuminac breakwater with more than 100 men and boys on board. The Alda Marie, manned by Bernie Jenkins and his nephew Cyril, and the Gulf Prowler, captained by Theodore Williston, are typical of the open-decked boats that put out to sea that day. They are makeshift at best, with discarded tires as protective bumpers and gas engines salvaged from old automobiles.
Oh, the boats weren't well equipped either. You know, just to fasten your engine down to the bedding, a spike or a couple of spikes and bent over to the holder. I don't think I had any safety equipment whatsoever.
The fishermen head out from Escuminac into the Miramichi Bay. They are joined by 60-year-old Fraser Cook and his son, Edward, who have come all the way from Prince Edward Island to share in the salmon harvest. Some, like Theodore Williston and Roy Lloyd, go farther out to fish for mackerel in the open waters of the Gulf of St. Lawrence.
The night went on, it got more choppier. I think around 8 o'clock we got the first report, and I think it said something like 25 or 30 miles an hour, northeast. Well, that's really not bad out there.
But the weather is about to get a lot worse. A hurricane from the Gulf of Mexico is heading north towards the low-pressure system locked in over the New England coast.
And essentially, the two systems merged, and it packed quite a wallop.
At 10 p.m., marine frequencies and private radio stations broadcast full gale warnings, but few fishermen have radios on board to hear them.
By 10 o'clock, the winds were 60, 65 kilometers per hour. And then by 3 o'clock in the morning, they were about 89 kilometers per hour, gusting to about 113 kilometers per hour. You had waves of monstrous proportion. You had driving rain, you had fog, you had strong winds. It was really a litany of everything that could be wrong with regards to the weather was wrong at that particular time.
The Sharon L., Roy Lloyd's boat, is the largest of the Escuminac fleet, but even it is tossed by waves, fueled by savage winds.
It's an awful swell, like maybe 40 feet, 50 feet. So I said, when are we getting out of here? I said, to Dad, I said, can't stay here forever, you know. Oh, no, he said, we can't go now, he said. It's not going to be very nice inside, he said.
With their nets providing some anchorage, all the fishermen can do is hoist sail, keep into the wind, and pray that the weather will improve by morning. But this storm is just beginning. Early Saturday morning, June 20th, 1959. Residents of the fishing villages on the coast of New Brunswick's Miramichi Bay wake up to a storm like nothing they've ever seen before.
That morning, we had no power, and it was kind of chilly. And I remember looking out the window and the seas. I never saw seas like that come over the wharf in my life.
And I remember my mom saying, if the guys went out last night, they're not coming back. And she was hoping that they would have stayed at the wharf in the boat when the storm started. But it didn't happen that way.
On the Chiesson's boat, Albert and his son Alphonse have ridden the storm throughout the night. But now, with huge waves pounding them mercilessly, they cut their nets to try to reach the safety of Escuminac Harbor. On the Gulf Prowler, Theodore Williston and his crew are heading home.
When I hauled in my nets the next morning, I didn't think that the storm was really as bad as it was. And I forgot about my uncle's training of Look, boy, you don't come in a bad morning, you go out. I didn't think it was that bad.
Typically, when you have strong winds, it just blows the fog away. But in this case, the visibility was flipping up and down. There were moments where you couldn't see at all, and then 5 minutes later, you could see.
It is at one of these moments that Theodore realizes he is headed into the dangerously shallow waters of the Miramichi sandbar, where giant breakers threaten to destroy them.
So I just watched for a chance, and I turned the boat around, and we get out to the breakers into deeper water, and not too far off, I seen boats coming. And they were heading for where we had got out of. And one was Jack Doucette. The other was Bernie Jenkins.
We didn't realize how far we had drifted in on account of these heavy winds and the tide going inward, and we met Theodore Willison. When Theodore Willison met up with us, he came to us and he said that he gave us our position where we were. We're up near the bar. So from the bar, we had to proceed about southeast to go to the Escuminac breakwater.
On board the Francine D, Captain Jack Doucette tells sons Alphonse and Everett to fuel up for the trip home. Family friend William George Manuel helps Jack swing the boat around while the boys go to the cabin to look for a funnel.
And we had no sooner sit down and look under the bunks for the funnel. Then he hollered, "Watch out, boys, we're at her."
A monster wave lifts the Francine D 15 meters up, then flips it like a wooden toy. 17-year-old Alphonse and his 14-year-old brother Everett are still inside the cabin.
Water started coming in, and Everett made for the door. I grabbed him by the shoulder and held him there. I was waiting for the gush of the water to stop. So anyway, when the water stopped coming in, I kind of pushed him on the shoulder and he took off through the door for outside. He was bottom up, but she was coming around again, righting herself up.
Alphonse pulls his younger brother back to the sinking boat, and they climb to the top of the wheelhouse.
I looked up, my old man was on the bow of the boat, hanging on for dear life. And the set line that we had on that broke clear from the nets happened to fall on his hand. That's how come he saved himself.
The other boats have seen the Francine D capsize, but Bernie Jenkins' boat, the Alda Marie, is closest to help. As Bernie brings her dangerously close, his nephew Cyril tries to get a lifeline to the two boys.
And the second time he hit it, marked my hand. And I passed the noose around every one of Everett's, under his armpits, and around his body.
While Bernie and Cyril haul Everett to the Alda Marie, on the Francine D, Alphonse can see that his father Jack is drowning in the pounding sea. With Everett on board the Alda Marie, Bernie makes a third pass, and Cyril hits his target again. But this time, Alphonse crawls to his father on the bow.
He was still hanging on for dear life with one arm, so I passed the rope under the other arm. I told him hang on to that. He did with one hand, but he wouldn't let go of the anchor.
So the line at that time was getting tight. Then there's a wave come and wash him off of the bow over the foredeck, and I started hauling. He must have had a death grip because he did not have enough life in him to hold on to nothing.
As Bernie circles around again, something catches Alphonse's attention.
I happened to look down, and William George was in the steering cabin. His head was completely bald, and he was split from ear to ear. So I kind of leaned over the top of the cabin and slid the door shut so his body would come in with the boat.
On the Alda Marie, as Bernie makes his fourth pass, his nephew throws the rope to Alphonse one more time.
I didn't wait to be hauled over. I got it by one hand and I took off, and I was so glad to get out of there.
It is a moment neither Alphonse nor his rescuers have time to savor.
I was moving towards the wheelhouse again when I seen this big wave come down and hit us. Just lifted us right out of the water. The boat went down again on the starboard side and split all the planks on our starboard side. The engine turned around off this bed as well. So there we were. We were crippled.
In another part of the bay, Prince Edward Islanders Edward Cook and his father Fraser are attempting a rescue of their own. But as they try to reach the overturned boat nearby, the waves swamp their boat.
we have to go help. Well, he said, Dad, he said, we let go of these nets. He said, it's the only thing holding us into the sea. He said, if we let go of these nets, we're going to be like that.
With their sail and their nets gone, the cooks are at the mercy of the sea. An enormous wave hits them broadside and flips their boat over. Miraculously, the boat rights itself and the men are able to get back on board. Edward lashes himself to the mast, urging his father to do the same. But Fraser is intent on getting the engine started, their only hope of escape. He is still working on it when a monstrous wave comes crashing down. Saturday, June 20th, 1959. A storm over the Gulf of St. Lawrence continues to push heavy seas into New Brunswick's Miramichi Bay.
It just got worse and worse all day long. I remember my in-laws came down and we walked the floor and looked out the windows and looked at the wharf and saw all the people gathering and, you know, the commotion.
After waiting in deep water as long as they can, Captain Roy Lloyd and his crew are headed for the Escuminac breakwater and home.
Everywhere you'd look could be debris, you know, like 5-gallon gas cans that were empty and stuff floating by and things, and porridge, and even seen a cabin one time, like a going floating. So Dad said there's a lot of people in trouble.
It is not long before crewman Clorne Jimmo sees one of those people firsthand.
And he says, Roy, he said, I think there's a boat that looks to be a man on the stern of her, he said.
The man is 28-year-old Edward Cook from Prince Edward Island. He is tied by his hands and feet to the mast of the stricken boat. On the Sharonelle, Clorne Jimmo throws Cook a lifeline as Roy Lloyd maneuvers his boat perilously close to the wreck.
The life jacket finally floated down and come in underneath his arms. And when the boat come back down again, they pulled and out he come into the water. But when they brought him aboard, it was just like he was going to die. We couldn't hardly get anything out of him. We asked about his dad, and he said, he's gone. He's gone.
In Escuminac, the town has gathered down at the wharf to wait for loved ones. Delilah Lloyd is comforting Clorne Jimmo's pregnant wife, June, when she learns that Roy's boat has been sighted.
You could see the boat coming in, and that boat would go way up and away, and you could see all the bottom of it, you know. And then it would disappear. It would go down. Couldn't see any of it. Every time it went down, your heart came up to your mouth.
For the crew of the Sharonelle, navigating the narrow 25-meter entrance to the harbor is as perilous as riding the high seas.
That was terribly rough because it was just a little gap. But he come in and he opened it up. And we got in the wharf, and I was happy, I'll tell you that.
I was so glad to see Brian. He looked so handsome to me. He never did look so handsome. Oh my goodness, I thought he was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Then my husband got out of the cabin. He had blood running down his face. He must have bumped his head or something. But that was okay. He was in and he was alive.
For those who have survived, their safe return is bittersweet.
Out at sea, well, I just took things for granted. Nothing bothered me too much. But once I got in and they knew there was men drowned, come ashore, I got numb then. This is the feeling I had, kind of a numbness thing.
For others, the wait continues. Word of the Doucette rescue spreads through town, but Bernie Jenkins' boat, the Ulda Marie, is nowhere in sight. She is still at sea, crippled by the monster wave that tore her engine from its moorings. Her crew is tired, hungry, and barely able to bail.
Then we drifted all that day. By that evening, about 6 o'clock, we're down off Escuminac Point. So eventually we got our nets caught into the lobster spars, and there we were anchored.
Their firewood soaked, the men use the boat's tire fenders to cook the only food they have left on board.
All we had left was salt water from the sea to cook some salmon. We had no bread, no water left, no nothing, but salmon was very good.
With renewed strength and resolve, the men worked together to get the engine back in place.
We weren't no mechanics, me nor my Uncle Bernie. The old man Doucette knew a little bit about it, so he rewired the engine for us that night. Now, of course, about 8 o'clock or so, we hit the old starter and away she went.
With its engine started and the seas slackening, the Alda Marie rides the waves back home, pulling into harbor in the dark hours before morning. Sunday, June 21st, 1959. Residents of the Miramichi Bay awakened to a day different from the one before.
On Sunday morning, there wasn't a ripple on the water. It was unbelievable how it could go from what it was to being so calm. And a lot of them went back out looking for, nets and boats and see what they could find.
I remember a man coming to our house around noon. Yeah, he said there's pieces of boats coming in, we're finding dead bodies in the boats, and my mom started to cry, and then she said, if there's any more news, he said, I'll let you know, but he never came back.
While Sunday offers little hope for some, it is a day of miracles for the families of Bernie Jenkins and Jack Doucette.
People were out looking for bodies and looking for boats and whatever, and they heard what sounded way off in the distance like a boat coming across the water. They said, that can't be. They got closer and closer, and it was.
More miracles happened in that boat that day than you can count, because everything we did, there was a miracle at the end of it. I say, by saving the Doucettes, we saved ourselves. Without their help, we would not be here, and without our help, they would not be here.
By Sunday night, 35 men and boys are dead or missing. The Escuminac disaster hits every family on the south side of the Miramichi Bay. Fathers and sons, friends and neighbors are gone forever.
Because we lived close to the church, and they had these very loud bells at the church at that time. And those bells rang in my head for a long, long time. My brother was found first, I believe it was the beginning of August, and not too long after they found my dad on the beach.
William and Albert Shessa were top-of-the-line fishermen, and their sons following in their footsteps. But once they lost their fathers, that was the end of their career fishing. This storm was a change in the way of life for a lot of people.
My husband didn't stay fishing very long after that. He got rid of his boat and he went into construction.
When he decided he was going to give up the license, I don't think he ever missed it. He was glad to get out of it, and I think I was too.
In 1961, Governor General Georges Vanier presents Bernie and Cyril Jenkins with British Empire medals for gallantry for the rescue of the Doucettes. Alphonse Doucette receives the Queen's Commendation for brave conduct. He gives one of the 2 silver wings to his brother Everett.
I'm glad to have him there, don't get me wrong. What I done, I didn't do it for bravery. I was in a desperate situation, in a bad situation. I was the only one that was mobile, with head enough to do what to do next.
There are many heroic acts that go unrecognized until a memorial is erected in Escuminac to commemorate the 35 lost in the storm of June 1959. A separate plaque honors those who helped save the lives of their fellow fishermen. Today, the Escuminac breakwater is the largest inshore wharf in Canada, and fishermen still fish the waters of Miramichi Bay. But times have definitely changed for the better since that terrible weekend in 1959.
The boats are bigger. They're made out of fiberglass today. They have diesel engines. They've got radar and depth sounders and GPS and all of that they didn't have way back then.
I still go out in all kinds of weather, but I get a phone I got all the numbers for rescue and everywhere. So we're in closer contact, and the weather report is quite a bit more accurate. I've learned a lot from the disaster, because you never know if you leave home if you're going to get back or not.
16 years before the tragedy at Miramichi Bay, another fishing expedition begins as the schooner the Flora Alberta sets off into the fog on a collision course with disaster. Nova Scotia is Canada's second smallest province, known for its rugged beauty and dependence upon the ocean as a natural resource. Along the province's southern coast are a series of villages. Blue Rocks, Lunenburg, and Vogler's Cove have for generations looked to the sea for their livelihood.
South Shore of Nova Scotia is an interesting place. It's physically beautiful, many picturesque little fishing villages.
In the 1940s, the people who live in these South Shore fishing villages are members of tightly knit communities that often struggle financially.
Money was very scarce, and I worked in the grocery store after school and on weekends and holidays.
In 1943, the fishing industry was very important. Those younger men who were unable to enlist and fight in the war were able to maintain their occupation as fishermen. They either went out on fishing boats, or they worked in the fish plants.
Captain Guy Tanner is one of the most renowned fishing captains in the Lunenburg area.
He was what they call in this area a high lines captain, in that he brought in very good catches every trip. And people liked to sail with him because it was a good wage for them, good earning for them.
Captain Tanner's vessel is a 140-foot wooden schooner named the Flora Alberta, after his daughter.
They would go out for several days on longer trips and into the middle of the ocean, which could be a lot more dangerous for them because they weren't able to go back to shore as easily.
April 1943. Captain Tanner plans a 5-day fishing voyage with a return home planned before Good Friday. Members of the Flora Alberta crew are also preparing for the trip. In a village nearby, crew member Bertie Tanner wakes up early. Bertie, unrelated to Captain Tanner, is a dedicated father and family man.
If I woke up with a toothache in the middle of the night, he would get up and rock me. You know, he was that kind of a person. He took care of his children.
The pending fishing trip is putting pressure on members of the Tanner household.
It was the last trip before Easter, and my father was going to stay home as well. And he said to my mother, should I stay home or should I go? And she said, Bertie, you know, you have to make up your mind what you want to do. Well, he said, it's a chance to make a little more money for Easter, so I'll go.
Bertie's 11-year-old daughter, Joan, sees her father's trip as a chance to ask for something she has been wanting for a long time.
A couple days before he left, I asked him for a perm. And he said, no, they cost $3. It's too expensive. We can't afford it. But you know, a child will never give up. So I kept asking and asking. And at the last minute, just before he left the house, I said, Dad, one more time, can I have my perm? And he couldn't say no. He said yes.
Also in Blue Rocks, Ronnie Miller takes some time to relax with his wife Melrose and his extended family before his voyage on the Flora Alberta. Melrose is pregnant with their 4th child.
And we lived together with our grandmother, and we lived together in the house all together, and I had 2 cousins, so it was 5 children.
Ronnie isn't completely sure he should take the opportunity to sail aboard the Flora Alberta.
He was going to stay home that trip, and then he decided he would go to make some extra money for Easter treats for the kids.
In the small fishing community of Vogler's Cove, Garth Reinhardt also prepares to go to sea on the Flora Alberta.
He was going to be 20 years old in June. He was basically just an everyday guy. They were a family that lost their father, and so the boys was supporting their mother.
Also from Vogler's Cove is Ira Smith. He is 25 years old and has already earned a living from the sea for many years.
Ira was very much loved by his siblings and was a very gregarious chap, a very outgoing chap. Ira was just a fun-loving chap who had lots of friends and enjoyed life.
My father was very close to his brother Ira, and as the two youngest of a large family, they would spend time together. As children, they played together. As young adults, they experienced life together.
The following Saturday evening, the Flora Alberta, with a crew of 28, leaves Blue Rocks destined for the West Bank, approximately 90 miles out to sea. That same day, a vessel fated to cross paths with the Flora Alberta arrives in the harbor of Halifax. The ship is an Irish steamer, which will be part of a convoy scheduled to bring supplies to war-ravaged England.
Well, the Faned Head was a typical cargo ship of that period, the vicinity of about 400 feet, 70 wide. And she belonged to a very prestigious Northern Ireland company, where the men and the crew were well-disciplined, well-trained, extremely well-trained.
The Faned Head is captained by Tom Heddles, a man who grew up in Ireland in a community very similar to the South Shore of Nova Scotia.
He was beyond retirement age, but kept there because of his seniority and because of the need of a man of his caliber. He was extremely well experienced.
At Halifax Harbor, Captain Heddles attends a meeting with the leader of the convoy.
All the captains and said personal radio officers meet in conference, where they're given orders both in course and speed, and also some direction as far as communication between each other and what to do, what not to do.
It will be important for all ships to follow convoy orders to ensure safety. German U-boats have been wreaking havoc on shipping lanes, making the Atlantic a graveyard for supply ships to England. Thursday, April 22nd, 1943. Aboard the Flora Alberta, Captain Tanner presides over another successful expedition. 80,000 pounds of fish are already preserved on ice. Bertie Tanner and Garth Reinhardt work in a dory, baiting lines. Once the lines have hooked fish, they haul their catch to the dory. Meanwhile, Ronnie Miller and Ira Smith work hard to stow the cargo of fresh fish in a hold of the Flora Alberta.
So there would have been a lot of work. They would have been on call to do the shifts for the watch at night.
At the same time, the Faned Head leaves Halifax Harbor as part of an 8-ship convoy to the British Isles. 4 military ships act as its escort.
You're locked into a tightly blocked group of ships with ships front of you, side of you, behind you, and you don't deter too much from that, both in speed and course.
After a hard day of work, the crew aboard the Flora Alberta goes below deck to get some sleep. The schooner has taken up a position close to Sable Island, allowing itself to drift slowly westward. Garth Reinhardt and Bertie Tanner remain on deck during the first watch. 1 a.m., Friday, April 23rd, 1943. Fog closes in around the convoy. Aboard the Faned Head, Captain Heddles orders a sharp lookout from his crew. The lead ships in the convoy blow their foghorns every 5 minutes as a warning to any ships that might be in the area. Meanwhile, the Flora Alberta has drifted from its profitable fishing location, and Captain Tanner sets a course to return. Fog reduces visibility to 0, and Tanner has 3 men on deck for the watch. The Flora Alberta blows its fog signal every minute.
It was heavy fog. There was no way they could visually see each other, so they were relying on the warning horns, the fog horns, to let the other vessels know that they were there.
The Fannet Head bears a course heading steadily southeast, steaming closer and closer to the Flora Alberta. Shortly after 4 a.m. aboard the Fannet Head, a crew member on watch reports hearing a fog whistle. Captain Heddles orders the ship's light to full brilliance, but cannot alter course because of the rules of the convoy. On the Flora Alberta, Captain Tanner, believing that all is well, leaves the bridge in charge of one of the crew and goes below deck for breakfast. He has no idea that the Fannet Head has entered the fog bank and is currently heading directly towards the Flora Alberta.
I guess I can picture it being just heavy fog with the 2 vessels approaching each other.
Moments after Captain Tanner goes below deck, the Fannet Head is spotted looming out of the fog, less than a ship's length away. The Flora Alberta cannot alter course in time.
That was so foggy. And when they heard motors from the ship was right there.
On the Fannet Head, the Flora Alberta has been seen, and Captain Heddles orders evasive maneuvers. But the heavy steamer cannot be stopped in time. The Fannet Head crashes into the wooden schooner, virtually splitting it in 2. The stricken vessel has only moments before it will be claimed by the frigid waters of the Atlantic Ocean, leaving the crew with little or no chance of survival. Saturday, April 23, 1943. The Fannet Head, a steamship in a military convoy traveling in dense fog, collides with the fishing schooner, the Flora Alberta, with 28 crew members on board.
It was disastrous in as much as you get a sort of a 10,000-ton ship running into a small wooden schooner.
The steamer's heavy steel hull drives through the schooner, practically cutting the wooden ship in 2. Below deck on the Flora Alberta, the impact from the Fannet Head startles the crew.
At the time of the collision, Uncle Ira would have been jolted awake. He may have heard the shouting of the men just prior to the collision. It's hard to imagine what would go through your mind realizing that the ship you're on was now smashed into pieces and that you were going into the water, and not knowing what was going to happen beyond that.
In the opening seconds of the collision, the Fannet Head lurches forward. Captain Heddles yells out orders as he regains his footing and attempts to maneuver his ship to remain in contact with the shattered wreck of the Flora Alberta.
A good practice to do when 2 ships are in collision is to keep them together as long as you can. The minute you pull them apart, well, you open up a big gaping hole.
In the galley, Captain Guy Tanner shouts a warning to his crew, some of them still in their bunks, to get off the ship.
He did warn them, and they did get out of their bunks.
Ronnie Miller wakes up a crewmate, and they quickly pull on their rubber boots and head for the gangway up to the deck.
It wasn't very much time because Guy said he went up the galley steps to go up on deck, and then that was it, so it wasn't very much time.
The first thing he did, he said, was jumped out of his bunk and ran to go up the gangway. He said when he went up the gangway, he knew the pressure of the water coming down, that no one else could get up.
Reinhardt makes it on deck and dives into the frigid ocean waters.
He could swim, and he got a piece of wreckage.
Ronnie Miller is pinned between the wreckage of the Flora Alberta and the bow wake of the Fannet Head. He attempts to stay afloat in the frigid water, but it is no use. He disappears amidst a pile of debris and sinks below the surface. Bertie Tanner also makes it on deck of the Flora Alberta, but another tragedy strikes. The sail from the mast of the schooner falls to the deck, trapping Bertie beneath it.
There was so much confusion that there was very little opportunity for men to help each other.
Water rushes upon Ira Smith, and the collapsing timber of the ship prevents his escape. As the hull of the Flora Alberta begins to sink, he struggles for his life before being claimed by the frigid sea. Within minutes, the Flora Alberta sinks into the frigid waters of the Atlantic Ocean. With water temperatures hovering just above 4 degrees Celsius, the survivors have only minutes to live. Despite damage to her bow, the Fanid Head remains seaworthy. Captain Heddles orders lifeboats into the water to rescue survivors from the Flora Alberta. He breaks radio silence with a transmission sent to the convoy's Commodore. Hampered by fog and darkness, they search for more than an hour, but find only 7 Flora Alberta crew members alive. 21 of their comrades are lost at sea. The survivors are taken aboard the Fanid Head, which leaves the convoy and returns to Halifax. Word of the disaster spreads through the villages of the south shore of Nova Scotia. News of Ronnie Miller's death turns the large household into a center for mourning.
They were all together, so there was 2 families mourning in one house. Quite upsetting.
The shock of her husband's death causes a terrible reaction for Melrose Miller.
She was expecting a child, but she was so taken back by that disaster that particular day, and sobbed and sobbed and so forth, and she miscarried. And that was an extra life that was lost, you might say, because of the disaster.
Bertie Tanner and Iris Smith are also lost at sea. Their bodies are never found. Relief sweeps over the families of the survivors. Captain Guy Tanner suffers only a broken wrist. Garth Reinhardt survives along with his 2 brothers, who were also on board. For the families of those who did not survive, the reality of losing the only breadwinner is an added burden.
It was hard not to have, you know, a man there, and he was making the money, you know. Women didn't work in those days, and at the time there wasn't very much money. Everyone had to get out there and help.
The fact that the accident happens during the war to a military convoy keeps the details from public scrutiny. At the trial, weather conditions are revealed as a factor in the accident. It is also argued that the Flora Alberta did not maneuver properly when the Fanid Head was spotted. In the years after the schooner's sinking, new vessels, along with older seafaring ships, are equipped with radar. This technological development helps to make ship collisions much less common. The Flora Alberta has no permanent memorial, but those aboard her who were lost at sea are remembered as part of the Fishermen's Memorial Service once every decade.
When I was still a little girl, I can remember going to Lunenburg for a memorial service for those who were lost at sea. At that time, flowers were thrown into the water. There were hymns sung. And my father made sure that we attended that service to honor Uncle Ira.
For those connected to the tragedies of the Flora Alberta and the Escuminac storm, the pain does not easily fade.
I think if somebody dies and you bury them, it puts a closure to it. But if they get lost and you can't find them, it never ends. You go on thinking that maybe they're somewhere. I thought he was on an island or on a rock or somebody picked him up.
Blue Rocks, I think, will always be remembered as a village that lost the majority of their men to the ocean. My father and friends, you know, Fred, he always came to our house, and John, he lived next door, and it was a change in the family. Not only my family, all the families that was involved. Quite a change.
That's why today I only live 24 hours at a time, and I do the best I can every day.
It'll never be forgotten till maybe our grandchildren are gone. It's going to take a few generations before the memory of that is erased and it's read as history.